Good morning and welcome into the show. It is Daniel Wortman coming to you live from the Dreamagine 8 Sports Studios. It's 8 a.m. on the East Coast, 5 a.m. out west, 3 o'clock. No, make that 2 o'clock in Paris. Thanks for tuning in today, wherever you are in America, around the world. Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for following. I hope you're having a great morning so far. Coming up in just a few minutes, a friend of the show, a friend apart from the show, Chris Kessel, will be joining us. Looking forward to catching up with him, our first chat on the show of the new year, to kind of talk about some of the stuff we were talking about on Monday, as well as some other things. But Monday show, we were digging into some of the policy and bylaw amendments that U.S. Soccer needs to take a look at, and some of the things that they need to, seriously consider. And in that conversation, I think you'll find, because Chris is involved in the effort. I mean, his state association has submitted one of the policy amendments, and it's the policy concerning equality in voting, equality in representation, in regards to the professional council. So we will get into that here in just a few minutes. I wanted to open today's show with some news out of Charlotte. David Hodges, at Hodges Reporting on Twitter, said new campaign finance records show, this is from a couple days ago, show that Panthers owner David Tepper and members of the team's operations staff made campaign contributions to several Charlotte elected officials leading up to the closed-door council discussion about MLS on September 23rd. Mayor Vi Lyle's committee received the biggest donation, $5,200, which is the max allowed, from Tepper on August 13. She also received $250 apiece from President Tom Glick and Chief Operating Officer Mark Hart. Councilman James Smuggy Mitchell received $500 from Glick on September 5th. WBTV previously reported that Mitchell went on a taxpayer-funded trip with Glick to Detroit in 2018 to tour some of the city's stadiums. Mitchell didn't respond to my questions for this story. Councilman Larkin Eggleston received $250 from Panthers General Counsel Stephen Argyris on September 9th. In November, Mayor Vi Lyles sent a letter to MLS pledging $110 million in hospitality funds to help make the deal happen. While the city still has to negotiate how that money is spent, there's little debate how much money is going toward the MLS project. In an email statement, Eggleston said the idea that such a small contribution would influence such an important vote was laughable. A campaign spokesperson for Mayor Vi Lyles emailed me that these contributions to her campaign are not conflicts of interest. A spokesperson for the Panthers wrote, members of our organization are actively engaged in the community in a variety of ways, including providing support to candidates for public office. You can read the whole story here, and it airs tonight at 6 on at WBTV_news, and you can check out their website, WBTV.com, to find the story and more color to the story. So the basic synopsis here is that in Charlotte, what they were trying to do, and this has actually been something that Major League Soccer has made a priority over the last few years. It's not enough to buy in to Major League Soccer. One of the things that they want to see and they try to help you do is extort the local government, local municipalities for tax subsidies or direct contributions to Major League Soccer. Now, it's important to understand a little bit of Major League Soccer structure as to why it would matter. Why would they care if David Tepper, and who is the owner of the Carolina Panthers, who's wanting to bring in Major League Soccer to Charlotte, why would they care if he got money from the city of Charlotte? Why would he care why would they care if he was able to get $110 million? If they said, hey, we need you to come up with, our fee now is $300 million, because we've got so many payouts to go to others that, the fee just keeps rising. It's not the actual value. This is similar to a Ponzi scheme in that the previous entries into the league all get a payout when this money comes in. So that's why it's important to understand the structure of Major League Soccer. It is a single entity LLC. The league that you see on TV, the LA Galaxy, the LAFC, Seattle Sounders, Atlanta United, Columbus Crew, it's one company you're watching on TV. Those are not separate legal entities. That's one company. That is Major League Soccer, LA Galaxy, Major League Soccer, LAFC, Major League Soccer, Seattle Sounders, so on and so forth. It is not exactly franchises in its purest sense, but to get an idea of the legal ramifications of this, it is very similar to a franchise in that it is basically each of these teams are MLS offices. They're corporate offices in all of these cities. So it's MLS Seattle, MLS LA, MLS LA, MLS Chicago, MLS Atlanta, etc. All of the player paychecks are coming from Major League Soccer. All of the players that if you've got a favorite player in the league, let's say it's Carlos Vela. His paycheck's not coming from LAFC. It comes from MLS. So why, if you back up here, why would the league, in deciding who they want to join the league, who they want to come into the league as a new MLS outpost, why do they put an emphasis on getting these new MLS offices, i.e. teams in a local market, coming in with public money, with taxpayer dollars? Because David Tepper, if he brings MLS to Charlotte, he's not bringing... He's not getting something that is a new business joining in a collection of other businesses. He's buying into the club. Robert Kraft, owner of the New England Patriots, he is the owner-operator inside of MLS that has the New England Revolution. David Tepper is buying into MLS to be a shareholder of the company, the single company. And he's going to get a license to operate an MLS corporate office, i.e. Charlotte MLS, whatever the soccer name and team is, in Charlotte. So one of the things that I look at in this story as to why is MLS putting this pressure on, or an emphasis might be a better word, on these new owners, getting public money, is that it's less money that the owners themselves are having to put in. This is also a way for MLS as a company to get integrated with local government. Why? Down the road, MLS as a company, maybe it's real estate projects, maybe it's other things, they are trying to infiltrate the halls of power in these local markets. Now, from a strategy standpoint, from MLS's side of things, it makes total sense. It makes complete sense as to why MLS would want to do this. The reason why MLS would want to do this is obvious. What's looking from the outside in, what's not smart are these businesses these local governments, these municipalities, these cities falling for it. When all of the data says that the worst thing local cities can do is throw money at these wealthy sports owners, because it doesn't actually pay off for the cities. And you ask yourself, well, if the data says that, why do these cities keep falling for it? Why do these cities keep giving the money out? And it's these contributions to the mayor and the other members. That's not necessarily swaying their decision, and it's certainly not illegal. But what it is doing is it is buying them access to have conversations. So, $5,000 here, $250 here, whatever. That's just saying, hey, I paid the fee to get on your calendar so we can have a meeting. Doesn't mean that they're going to do what you want them to do, but that's how you get in the door. Like, that's the entry fee. That's the cover to get in, to have the conversation. But why are these cities falling for it? They're falling for it because of MLS's structure. Because the league itself is one single company, and their expansion is not based on sporting merit. Outside organizations who are successful, who win the USL championship and get promoted into the first division, into Major League Soccer. Instead, it is on a principle I talk about on the show, artificial scarcity. It's a closed system. It is a closed league. It is a closed business. And the business owner-operators, i.e. all of these MLS corporate offices you see all over the country, in Sporting Kansas City, in the Colorado Rapids, in FC Dallas, etc., they're the ones voting on who they let in next, if they let anyone in next, which creates artificially inflated values or money for these prospective owner operators to have to come up with And it also gives them the leverage to say to a David Tepper, hey, look, if you want to come in, here's some things that we're trying to do, that we're trying to work on. We want to see that from you. And what that allows David Tepper to do is say, look, I just paid $300 million to get into MLS. No, you didn't. You just got the city of Charlotte to fork out over $100 million, or at least promise over $100 million, even if that doesn't come to light. And that gives MLS the ability to go around beating its chest, saying our franchise values, our new team prices are over $300 million. It's all a shell game. It's ridiculous and absurd to me, but it is what it is. Our sponsor this half hour is Ductic Brand. If you have not checked out ducticbrand.com, I don't know what you're waiting for. You should go and do it today. DUKTIG brand.com and use promo code DWShow when you go to checkout, and you'll get 10% off of your purchase at ducticbrand.com. They have journals, they have coaching notebooks, they have all kinds of resources. If you are a soccer player or a soccer coach, it is worth checking out. Even a parent, go to ducticbrand.com, DUKTIG brand.com, use promo code DWShow, and you will get 10% off of your order. One of the things, if you were a club, that you could do is you can actually get some of their products branded with your club's logo. So that's something that you should take advantage of at ducticbrand.com. We'll be right back with Chris Kessel right after this. Welcome back to the show. As I said at the top of the show, a friend of the show, a friend of mine, first time on the show here in 2020, Chris Kessel. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you this morning?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. As I told you off the air a second ago, struggling a little bit this morning, lack of sleep, but you know what? We'll get through it. There's a lot worse things. So I don't want to come across as a complainer here, but you always have those seasons in life where you just don't feel like you can catch up on sleep, and I'm in one of those seasons this week, but it'll be all right. As my mom used to say, this too shall pass. So I'm sure eventually I'll find some Z's and be all right. Speaking of being all right, wanted to bring you on. Monday we spent a lot of time on that show talking about the need for these bylaws and policy proposals to to go up for a vote, and the necessity of the actual policies, why they need to be published. Went through specifically what U.S. Soccer released a few days ago in regards to the Illinois adult bylaw and policy proposal regarding the publishing of the professional league standards. And I want to get into all of those, but before we get into the Illinois adult, I want to start with the West Virginia policy that was submitted. We touched on it on Monday, but I wanted to bring you on to really get into more depth and details on the process, some of the feedback, the policy itself, and kind of get your thoughts and insight on where we're at in terms of these members of the U.S. Soccer Federation, i.e. West Virginia Soccer, Illinois Adults, etc., and their ability to propose rules and changes per the bylaws, and to make sure that the process is on the up and up. So from a West Virginia standpoint, what has been the process so far? What interaction have you guys had with members of the Federation or the board itself? Feedback about the policy. So can you kind of give us an update on where that is in the process as we look forward to the U.S. Soccer AGM coming up here in just a few weeks in Nashville, Tennessee?
Well, as I think most of the listeners know, we proposed a policy update that would require the professional leagues sanctioned at the same division of both genders to have equal voting strength. I think it's a very simple policy proposal that would just require, for example, the NWSL and MLS to have the same voting strength. And if a second division, women's league would ever start, or a third division women's league would ever start, that they would be weighted at the same strength when it came to voting at the AGM as the men's league. And we've had some back and forth with the Rules Committee and General Counsel Greg Fike from the Federation, where we think that the newest version of this policy proposal that we've submitted will be acceptable. The way that the bylaw that we're trying to interact with, I believe it's bylaw 302, is written, in our opinion, this policy shouldn't even be necessary. If you go and read it, it states, simply that the strength of each league is determined by the divisional level of the league. And currently, the way that the professional council, who determines the voting strength of each league, has interpreted that is they have added a lot of different clauses, such as number of teams in the league and how many people come and watch, the games in person, and all these other metrics that aren't included in the bylaw. It only states that divisional level is what determines, the voting strength of each league. And we felt that the way that it was being implemented was resulting in an inequitable and frankly unfair voting strength for the NWSL, which came in at less voting power than the second division men's league in the last election. And so we wrote a more complex policy at first, and the Rules Committee came back and said, hey, we feel like this will, conflict with the bylaw. And it was, while we didn't necessarily agree with their interpretation of it, you could see that a case could probably be made and cause confusion. So we wrote a scaled down version through interaction with Greg Fike, who, like I said, was step attorney, he gave he said that he kind of personally felt that we were going to get the same reaction to that. So then we just wrote the most scaled down, one sentence long version that you could possibly write that said that men's and women's leagues at the same level have to be weighted the same, and it's submitted, it was accepted, and at the next board meeting, there's going to be a vote on it. So, and that's at the AGM, and we're going to go from there. The feedback that we've gotten from board members that we've talked to has been very positive, actually. Everybody thinks that this is something that's necessary. Now, how that's going to play out going forward, and that's the board members, that's actually members of the athlete council, that's other voters from the from the national council, other state representatives. Everybody is very positive on how this goes. So I know that me and you maybe share a little bit of a difference here, which we often don't, but I actually think that going forward, that we're going to see movement on this, whether it's our exact proposal or something else happens where there's, a slight modification of it, or somebody else proposes something going forward. It will happen, because I don't see a position that anybody can take that they think that the women's league should have less power than the men's league. And it might not happen this time, but it will definitely happen by next time, even if that requires a bylaw change, which I think would pass with flying colors to allow a change like this. And, but to walk that statement back, even though I just threw it out there, it has been really hard to get something that has a lot of support, even, up for inclusion and ability to be voted on. It's a hard process. Not that I expected it to be easy, not that we expected it to be easy, but it is hard. And I'll say that this was, our executive director, Dave Laraba, is in Hall of Fames all across, the sport, and, a great advocate for the game and a great advocate for change. And he's a big supporter of this, policy proposal. And he had even never worked on a project like this. So the institutional knowledge that we possessed was very limited, but is growing rapidly. And I think that going forward, it's going to allow us to do things like this a lot more often to help change the game, and to allow us to work with other people and other organizations that want to propose things like this, who have never attempted something like this. We now have the knowledge base where we can help people try to change the game. And I think that that's a super positive. And, having Illinois attempted and learn these same lessons, that's a super positive. Massachusetts proposed, a policy change this year. That's a super positive, because, there was only one policy, or two policy changes last year, and this year there's three. So I think that appears to be a growing movement towards the membership of the organization trying to take control of changing the organization to better, to work better, to be better, which I don't know if that really had been happening at the pace that it's happening right now in the previous decade.
So one talk just a second ago that I've talked within the federal from a conceptual standpoint with idea in time you mentioned feedback, etc., and yet difficult process to go through, that there frustrations that there has been kind of, at the same time, we agree, we like, however, like this one's not going to work, or this is not this, or this is whatever. So from that standpoint, I'm hearing and sensing and seeing from my own observation this kind of gatekeeper, like it doesn't really matter what the will of the people are, or is. It matters what a few people in power decide is allowable or willing to entertain, i.e. the gatekeeper system. So you could have, the majority for, and if you're listening, you're trying to go, well, what's he saying? So here's a great example. In the way that U.S. soccer's elections are set up in the first place, right? So let's zoom out a level beyond the professional council where in the 2018 presidential election, Major League Soccer basically, for if you're doing rough math, had 3 votes for every 1 vote that the NWSL had, even though they're both Division I leagues. So that's the policy West Virginia is proposing to fix, so that, instead of Major League Soccer getting 3 votes and the NWSL only getting 1 vote, MLS would get 2 and the NWSL would get 2, would be the proposed change, so that there is equality there. But let's zoom out beyond that professional council. Let's look at the way the electorate is set up in the first place. The way that the elections go, the federation has gone in and weighted everyone's votes in such a way that it is it doesn't matter that more people want this candidate. 5, 6, 7, 8 people can vote and send the election in an entirely different course. So in the 2018 election, for example, in round 1, you had 2 candidates in the 30s. The next candidate was Eric Winalda. I was working on his campaign, as you know, and he ended up around the 17% mark. Yet, for him to get to that number at 17% compared to theirs that were in the low to mid 30s, he actually had gotten more votes, more individuals voting for him. So if you think of this in like presidential elections for the United States government, the popular vote, he had gotten more popular votes than the 2 candidates, Carlos and Kathy, combined. And yet it didn't matter. So the will of the people is actually, it's encoded into the federation through their policies, through their bylaws, through their structure and their system of governance to thwart the will of the people. So even though a policy or a policy amendment in this case is popular with the will of the people, a lot of people are on board. A lot of people like this. A lot of people think, hey, this is necessary. Oh, this is common sense. We need to do this. It's 2020. Why is the Federation so behind on an issue such as this? What we're experiencing what we were experiencing in the 2018 election is a little bit of what you're experiencing now in this process, in that the will of the people isn't necessarily the determining factor as to if or when a policy could get adopted. Instead, there are people in places of power within U.S. soccer that act as gatekeepers to progress. And if they don't like it, there are, things that they can do, or things that they can try to do to at least slow down, frustrate, or outright defy the will of the people and get away with it. In that context, how much have you experienced that part of the process in terms of this gatekeeper issue? Do you feel like it's gotten a fair shake so far, or do you feel like there have been efforts behind the scenes to slow walk or outright shut down, movement on the West Virginia policy amendment?
Well, I actually think that there are two things happening at once. I think that there are people acting in the exact manner that you're talking about, that they want to see this go away, that they'd rather handle it internally and try to come up with some sort of compromise that's not going to make the people, and by the people I mean the men's league, unhappy, and work out some sort of new structure on the way that they determine voting strength. And I do feel like that those people do absolutely exist. But I also feel like there are people within the organization who are doing exactly what they think is the right thing, which is looking at it, looking at the proposal, giving honest feedback. This is not going to work because we feel like this. But what I think has happened is the way that everything happens concerning your feedback and concerning the rules committee is so hands-off that it allows for everything to feel that way. Whereas if it was a more interactive process, I understand that they only meet every once in a while, so it can't be like an everyday process. But if there was more of a collaborative process, I guess that's the word I'm really trying to use there, a collaborative process of, hey, we understand that this is what you want to do, and we understand that you might not be lawyers, Here is out, because if people don't understand, the Rules Committee is all lawyers, and except for the athlete participant. Everybody else on it is a lawyer. So, and then they brought in, for the Illinois one, they brought in external counsel to give opinions on it. I mean, so if the process was more like, look, call us, let's talk about the rule, like, what are you trying to do here? Let's figure out how we can write this so that it doesn't conflict with the bylaw and still gives you exactly what you're trying to do. Like, let's work with you here instead of, nope, that's it. We don't think, here's our opinion, we've handed it down, and the board will either accept our opinion or reject our opinion and, et cetera, et cetera. If the process was more of collaborative, which when you look at everything about how the organization works, it's dictating to people. It's like there is a disconnect between what the Federation is and what the Federation thinks it is. The Federation is its members. I've written a blog post about this in the past, and I've talked about it on social media and face-to-face, and I've probably talked about it on here. The Federation is its members. It is a member organization. The Federation is not something that exists and then you join it, and they tell you what to do. We decide what the and by we, I mean the state organization, and the league, the professional leagues, and, the adult, associations, and just everybody has a say. We tell the Federation what to do. And what's happening in this process is multiple members are telling, the Federation, this is what we want to do. We think that everybody wants to do this, or most people want to do this. Most members want to do this. Let us try it. And then they say, no, the way that you've written this isn't right. And then that's the end of the process. Instead of going, okay, well, we're here to help. We're here to be a part of the process. Whether the committee, the Rules Committee, agrees with us or not shouldn't be important. What's important is the process and the members are done fairly, just like what the policy is about, fairly and equitably. And if this process was more collaborative, when we proposed it initially, they would have looked at it, they would have given the opinion, and then it would have been like, hey, call us, or let's get on a conference call, let's talk about this, and let's try to figure out a way, to make this a policy proposal that can go forth, and we can give it the stamp of approval of the Rules Committee agrees that this doesn't conflict with any bylaw, and, it should be brought for a vote, which is what their job is. But instead, it's not a collaborative process with the Rules Committee, and we didn't get that initially. And that's my main frustration. Like, I think that everybody that's a reasonable person would expect the organizations and the members that possess a lot of power to not want to give up their power. And I don't think that to me it's unreasonable, and they should be trying to do the right thing, but it was expected. That's the word there. It was expected. The rest of the process is where I actually am having my frustration is that it's not the collaborative, positive, let's try to figure out how to bring this forward, how to bring this policy proposal forward for a vote that I wanted it to be. Once we got the feedback, me and you talked about this off air. Once we got that initial feedback back, I was frustrated and I was unhappy that we got the decision, that West Virginia got the decision about it not being, them not feeling like it was ready to go forward. But I took it and I read it, as honest feedback, and I could see their point. I could see that it could be confusing, and and how it was going to interact and what it was trying to say. So we kept working. If we would have allowed that feedback to stop us, we would have stopped, and then this wouldn't have went forward. But I think that's the point. That point right there, that's the inflection point. What needed to happen is they needed to say, okay, this is what we think. We need to schedule a conference call, and boom, let's fix this. And then I think I would have had, I keep saying I, because I was the point person on this for West Virginia, but we would have had a much better experience with the whole process. But we know how it works now, and it's going to be different for everything going forward that we try to do.
In regards to policy proposals, now they're treated differently than bylaw proposals. In the way policy proposal, for example, only needs a 50% plus one approved council at an annual general meeting. Policies can, in advance of an AGM, and then would be an AGM at a later date, whereas bylaws require a and cannot be kind of pre-voted through or up for consideration, do anything to the bylaws. That is only reserved for an annual general meeting. So in terms of this process so far, what have you learned in terms of when policies can be proposed and submitted? Can those go to the board if it's a policy amendment or a new policy? Can those go to the board throughout the year? I mean, can they, in effect, get a policy proposal and it go up for a vote at the next board meeting, and then if the board likes it, it gets voted in? So can that be an ongoing process and not having to wait till a kind of once a year proposal timeline process compared to the bylaws?
Yes. As far as I know, which I haven't actually asked that direct question, but as far as we understand, yes. And I will actually ask Greg Fike that. That's the point person, obviously, as general counsel for the Federation. I'll ask him and I'll get that clarified. But as far as we know, that's exactly how it works.
So in that regard, even if there has been some frustration in this process, part of it, I think, is a learning curve, as you mentioned, because the Federation isn't forthcoming with, being transparent on process, proposals, being cooperative and collaborative. Even if there wasn't a conscious decision to put up roadblocks for the West Virginia policy or the Illinois adult policies, etc., it is certainly, felt like at times, I think, as listening to you describe the process, been a little frustrating and feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it feels like at least that the Federation hasn't been very helpful in trying to work together to craft a policy that, would make sense for them, as well as what West Virginia, from a big idea standpoint, was coming to the table with in the first place. So in that, how much of that do you think might be just the learning process because things haven't been laid out very clearly, and kind of going through it the first time? And what I would compare that to is, if you're trying to learn a skill, maybe it's a soccer player learning how to manipulate a ball in a certain way. Maybe you're a musician, you're trying to figure out how to play the piano. In the beginning, it's very frustrating. You want to beat your head against the wall, like you can't get your fingers to work the right way when you're trying to learn the piano, and you get both hands working together, and like you hear all this music on the radio, and like, I'm never going to be able to play like that ever. And then like you're out on a soccer ball, it's like, I can't even, step over the ball the right way. Like, you can't get my feet to work. But then you just keep working at it. Then it becomes more natural. Like you understand the process. It becomes easier. And then all of a sudden, you're playing, and whether it's soccer, you're playing the piano, and you're like, man, this isn't as bad as I thought it was in the beginning. How much of this process, in terms of learning and getting the education, do you think is going to make it easier going forward for West Virginia and other state associations and other members of U.S. Soccer to, on an ongoing effort, be able to work towards a submission process and getting things at least before the board going forward, and not having to necessarily look at this from a once a year hard process, but hey, it's March. Our state board at West Virginia has talked about a need for X. Let's write a policy proposal and let's go on and get it to the board, and it can go up for consideration at the April board meeting. How much of your thinking and process and experience has grown and changed through this, so that going forward you look at it in a more optimistic, like, hey, we can do this and we can do this more often?
I'm much more optimistic, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that part of the frustration is the fact that, even with, this is going to be my third AGM, but this is going to be Dave's 30th. So even amongst newish people like me, or experienced people like him, we had never went through this process. So it is a steep learning curve, and we've all learned a lot about, this process. And being frustrated oftentimes is caused by not knowing what's going on, how it works, anything. And now that we've done it, we have a lot better idea about how everything works. And I think going forward, plus, here in just a few weeks, we're going to be able to talk to all the people involved in this process face to face, as opposed to emails or, waiting and then just seeing, a press release with our with it being turned down as opposed to getting a call or whatever. And we'll be able to give feedback, face-to-face feedback of, this is how you all should handle this, that would allow us to be able to participate in this in a much better fashion. And next time it will be easier, even if nothing else changes. Next time will be easier. But hopefully the feedback that we give them on their process will allow them to take that into consideration and change how they handle it. Because like I said, I think that most people involved with the Federation, especially amongst these committees and things like this, they're trying to do the right thing. They're good soccer people. I don't think that they're out trying to sabotage West Virginia's policy proposal. I just think that, it could just be done a little bit better or a little bit differently to make it work smoother and feel more inclusive and everything like that. And I really am hopeful. I don't know how long. I mean, I don't know if the people that are on the committee this year will continue on it next year, because I know that it rolls and changes and, and they have some people step off and some people step on. But hopefully, we can all learn from this process and get better at it. And whatever's proposed in the future, it'll be easier for everybody and better for everybody and better for soccer in this country. I mean, that's what we all want here. That's what all your listeners want here, is just for soccer in this country to work better and be more inclusive. And this is a step in that direction, and changing these processes of how, people attempt to change it is a big step. I mean, it's a step that nobody would ever consider. And I'll be 100% honest here. I never considered this as a roadblock before, and, and I'm not talking about like having MLS, say that they don't want to give up all their voting power as a roadblock. Obviously we knew that was wrong, but like not getting feedback in a timely manner for your policy proposal changes as a roadblock. Who would ever consider that? I've never heard anybody say that that was a roadblock to change, but until you try things, you don't know what you don't know. And now we know this, and now this is something else that we can work to try to change, to try to make everything work better and smoother, and will help the game going forward.
When I was kind of reading through on Monday's show, and if you didn't get a chance to listen to that, and really, as I was kind of, didn't actually release reports in preparation going to take place in Nashville in February, and found this in terms of that piece from Illinois, the process you guys have experienced with West Virginia, looking at this from a, how do we get better? How do we make this better? Obviously, the policies in and of themselves are attempts to make the Federation function better and operate better in different areas, hence why these things were proposed. And on Monday's show, I was talking through some of those mechanics in terms of why we need a professional league standards that are cleaned up, that the process itself is standardized, and that the rules themselves are standardized, because that is not the case right now. And so by just getting them published into the policy manual creates an official workflow for the professional league standards that as a member organization allows all of its members to have input, feedback, knowledge thereof, etc., and protect the Federation from the appearance of sweetheart deals, insider trading, picking winners and losers, etc. And each of these policies and bylaw proposals, I kind of went through and talked talked about the reason why these different things are necessary, why, a procurement policy in the way that the Federation, spends money should go through an official, policy oversight from the National Council. They are the National Council is the overall accountability for the board of directors. The board of directors should not be able to just go rogue. It should be transparent and accountable to the members. And part of the problem with the board itself is the way it's constructed. So there's so many of these things where the board and the Federation for years has been basically run like a backyard club, not a national governing body. And it was done that in that way so that a few people could call the shots and do whatever they wanted, and everyone else just basically had to rubber stamp and go along with it. When in fact the governing documents of the Federation actually tell a different story, even though they haven't been operating by that story. And out of this process, one of the things I've seen is the fact that the U.S. Soccer Federation feedback and communications has to me been lacking. It's not been forthcoming. I know I've talked to you. I've talked to others who have gone through this process this time, and they've talked about the lack of feedback. Like they'll hear about an update on a bylaw or a policy proposal or amendment from social media or from somewhere else, and they've never even gotten an email back from the Federation on the thing that they themselves submitted. So even in that, to me, there's just so many of these things where not only are members like West Virginia learning through the process, but I think the Federation has hopefully learning through the process of how to do this better going forward, and trying to get a standardized policy. And if ever there was a little, small example of why policies need to be published in the policy manual, the process of feedback and communication from the Federation to a member in a process of submitting a proposal or a bylaw, and that part of that process is not published in the bylaws. It's not currently published in the policy manual, meaning there isn't a standard practice here, and therefore you're getting random, communications or no communications, or you're not getting direct communications. You're hearing it from other sources. That is why you need these policies published, because when you have them published, when you have a bylaw published, now there is an obligation of the Federation to do it this way, and to do it step by step and follow a procedure. And now a member knows what's going to happen. The Federation knows how to handle it. And it also creates a lot less headaches throughout the process because now it's published. That's why, if we look at all of the policies and bylaws that were put up for consideration by West Virginia and Illinois, and as well as Massachusetts, that's why these things need to go into the policy manual and the bylaws to make those processes in those areas streamlined, standardized, and will create a lot more or a lot less inefficiencies in structure and system of the Federation itself. So, I look forward to catching up with you in person here in a few weeks in Nashville. Hopefully we'll see some positive movement on these bylaws and policies as well, and see some progress here. And if not, if anything else, if nothing else, going forward, I think I've learned in watching and seeing this process, and I think, as you've mentioned, you guys have learned as well. Here's what we can do as some takeaways and hopefully find some progress going forward, even if we don't get some of these things passed in this upcoming AGM. So, Chris, thanks for coming on the show as always. Like I said, look forward to seeing you here in a few weeks in Nashville, and we'll definitely spend some time on air in Nashville, hanging out in person. So, looking forward to that here in just a few weeks. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me once again. All right, see you here in Nashville.
See you in Nashville. That is Chris Kessel, big friend of the show, friend of mine. The guy loves American soccer and wants to make it right, wants to make it better, and we need more people like him. If you've ever considered running for an office in your state, working in your local club, whatever the case may be, and you think you got something you can do to help, something that can, make things better for where you are locally. Maybe it's your state, whatever. Get involved. We need more people like Chris involved all over the country, and that is another way that we can make American soccer better in the long run. Our sponsor this half hour is Charity Water, charitywater.org. They provide clean drinking water to people all over the world, and you can be a part of that story at charitywater.org. We'll be right back after this.
No one, no man, no woman, no child should ever have to drink green water with bugs, with algae, with disease in it. Bad water and a lack of toilets kills more people than all the wars in the world. We know how to bring clean drinking water right now to every single person on earth. And when you can bring water into communities, it truly transforms them. It changes everything. Or you could know that you'd made a difference. You could know that you had truly impacted the life of a family, of a community, of a region. There was either clean water or there wasn't. We believe in a world where every single person has clean and safe water to drink, and we will continue fighting until that happens.
Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for tuning in each and every day. Thanks to Chris Kessel, big friend of the show, friend of mine, for coming on today to give us an update on their process going through this whole policy proposal process with the Federation. You can watch the show each and every weekday live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube at danielworkman.com. And thanks always for watching, listening, all of your feedback. You can also catch me on Twitter or Instagram at Daniel Workman. If you're going to be in Nashville for the AGM, that's February 13th, 14th, 15th. Hit me up. Catch me on Twitter at Daniel Workman. My DMs are open. Love to meet up with you. We'll try to announce some things that we're going to do in the next few weeks while we are in town. So look forward to meeting, seeing anyone there at the AGM. Look forward to seeing everyone again tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.